Hey everyone, I'm Father Alex Andahar,
And I'm the Reverend David Marshall.
and this is A Bridge Between, where we bridge our knowledge of the gospel. We bridge the distance between us, not friendship wise, just physical distance. I don't want to alarm you like last time. And this
Right.
time, what are we bridging this week?
Well, you say our knowledge of the gospel, which is true, um, but we also might bring some questions to this gospel that
Mhm.
we might be bridging from one question to another. It is an interesting. Well, I would love to get into it, but it's going to be an interesting, excuse me, an interesting gospel. So,
I agree too. I mean, this is one of the ones that we hear preached about so often. As you and I were talking about earlier, that there are usually just sometimes a handful of ways that this gospel reading is approached, and
right.
so it preachers may struggle to find a new take on it or a new angle.
Hmm.
And I think maybe that's what we're going to talk about today.
I think so, and it has to do with walking on water. And some of you, most of you, if not all of you, have used or heard the phrase by somebody who says, "Oh, that guy, he walks on water," or somebody said, "Well, he doesn't walk on water, but he's really good at,"
Right.
it's become more or less a catchphrase. And if you ever want to know what the origin of it is, this is it. Yeah, I would say it's from Matthew's gospel, but it's actually from all of them. So, we'll just put all into place here. But it's also interesting to me, and something that Alex, you and I were talking about before we started recording, is that there are no Old Testament parallels to what Jesus is about to do. That uh,
Correct.
he's doing something new. Having power over the sea and water and land and all that type of stuff. Yes, there are many, many Old Testament references that way, but nothing about what we're about to see. And interesting that the passage that we had left was, let the scribe bring out things that are old and new together. So that is exactly what Matthew's done, is that we have these Old Testament things that Jesus is doing, this thing that's new, and then we're going to do some more things that happened in the Old Testament that are going to happen again. And it's intriguing to me. So we have something that is new. Should we jump in?
Yeah, just go ahead and dive right in.
All right. So I'll just give a brief introduction. Jesus has a family member, cousin, most likely, John the Baptist, the one who baptizes, had been killed brutally. Jesus found out about it, went off to a place by himself. People found out where he was, and they gathered around, and he cured them. And then they didn't have any food, as we talked about last week. He said, "What food do you have among you?" "We have 5 loaves and 2 fish." Broke, blessed, and then off they go. Everybody ate, and they had plenty of leftovers. Jesus then dismisses two groups. He dismisses the disciples onto the boat and say, "You guys go." He dismisses the crowd, and then Jesus by himself goes up a mountain to pray.
Hmm.
That whatever it was he needed to pray about, he got interrupted, and so now he finally got to pray. And then when he was done praying, it was night. And like what happens here in Florida is that we often will get thunderstorms in the afternoon or in the evening. They have similar weather patterns where Jesus was. And so no one in their right mind would head out in a boat at that time of day because it means you might be heading out into a storm, and they did. And so the boat was out being battered by waves and was far from land. And you and I were talking before we recorded that the Greek side of this would say it may have been 6 football fields away from land, not any short distance. And Jesus decided to walk to go get to the boat. So that means he's walking on water. They see him, they freak out, they yell, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But Jesus said, "Take heart, do not worry, it is I, do not be afraid." So then the section we're going to spend our time on today is this.
Right.
Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he, Peter, noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Here ends the lesson.
Yeah. So, in what we were talking about before, is one of the ways that this text has been preached, and I admit that I have often kind of done a plain reading of the text and come away wanting to preach in this particular way, is Jesus calls us out of the boat in the same way that he calls Simon Peter. Being called out of the boat sometimes means being called out of a place that is comfortable or a place of safety, and that stepping out of the boat is, of course, the risk that we are called to take to step out in faith. Often I will hear preachers, including myself, talk about this as the church as a whole, the congregation or the parish as a whole, needs to step out of its usual way of doing things or its usual way of being and walk towards Jesus in an intentional way amidst the risk and the storms of life and the challenges. And when we remove our gaze from Jesus and begin to pay attention to the problem or the storm, where that becomes the focus, we sink.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you a totally different way of looking at this.
And I'm glad that you will, because we had talked about this kind of a very plain reading of the text, and now we're going to talk about a couple of other ways that we might process and talk about this.
Yes. So Jesus commanded Peter to come out. He didn't invite. It was a command. Now, Peter initiated the command. But, hey, if it's you, call me out. You and I both have received, some would call it invitation. I call it a pulling. Some call it a calling. But to me, it was a pulling towards ministry, that it wasn't, there always are choices. It's not that God's going to force us to do something we don't want to do.
Right.
But it was more than an invitation. And so the part I want to focus on, though, is that he was afraid because of the wind, whether it was strong or whether it was the wind, either one, that he was afraid. "Lord, save me," he cried out. And then the last sentence, when they got into the boat, the second to last sentence, when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. I have been in situations, I've been in church situations where we feel the storm, we are nervous, we cry out to the Lord, "Save us." And when we bring Jesus into the boat, suddenly everything calms down. And so that's what I wanted to focus on, was not Peter's grabbing onto the side of the boat and jumping over into the water and walking. But when you're feeling terrified, the wind, the waves, inviting Jesus into the boat and then having them cease. And then they worshiped him and they said, "You're the Son of God," which is a heresy in their day. Right. And you were supposed to say Caesar was the Son of God. It's also a problem within the Roman government for you to say that of Jesus, but they just did that.
Now, here's a question, and we talked about, are there parallels to other stories? When you talk about inviting Jesus into the boat, I recall, that the disciples are with Jesus, a storm comes upon them, Jesus is asleep in the boat, and the disciples rouse him and try to wake him up and ask the question, "Don't you care that we're about to die?"
Yes, I love it.
And I'm wondering if, as you're saying, perhaps the theme is maybe not about Simon Peter. If you want to preach on that, that's fine.
Right, of course.
But maybe the theme is about, is Jesus in your boat? Yeah. Perhaps the question that Simon Peter should have asked is, "Lord, if it is you, then come into the boat." Or, yes. "Lord, I know that it is you. Please come into our boat because I know you will calm this wind."
Yes. Yeah, if it's you, you can calm this wind down right now. Right? That's
right.
That's a totally different type of way of looking at it. So I grew up with a family that sails. We had a sailboat. And Dad would always have us ask permission to board. So Dad would usually be the first one on the boat to make sure, she hadn't sank or anything. And then my brother and I, mom never did it. Uh, but at least as far
Love
as I
that.
remember, I don't remember her
I
doing
love
it.
that.
Um,
Mom never did it.
yeah, and but permission to board, sir, is the permission to come aboard. That's just what's said, and I do that today with people on their boats. Others have done that with me with my boat about permission to come aboard. Permission granted. That there's just that thing, and this isn't Jesus's boat. So
Mm,
in those days, he would have had permission uh, to board, and
yeah.
that we have the ability. It seems strange in the church to say we have the ability to keep Jesus out, um, but
Well,
it's
that's not strange. That's not
well,
strange.
right. We'd like to think
I see that all the time.
right. Well, we call it the Lord's house and everything, but the fact is that is Jesus standing at your door? Is Jesus asking, waiting for your permission to come in? Um,
Well, first of all, and I know this is going to kind of maybe take us a little bit down a rabbit hole because there's
Good.
several threads here
I
that we
like
have
rabbit holes.
exposed.
Right.
First of all, I know from now on I will ask permission to come aboard whenever I visit you. That's number one.
Nice. Nice.
But number two, the idea of we can keep Jesus out of the boat because it's not his boat, is powerful because
Yeah.
the analogy is, of course, I can keep Jesus out of my soul. I can do whatever I can humanly,
Hmm.
within human reason possibility, to keep Jesus out of my heart, out of my soul, because it's mine, and I don't
Right.
have to let anybody in, right?
Right.
Even
Right.
though we're told that the soul is us, our bodies, our souls are the temples of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
But the
Right.
other thing is, and this is why I kind of laughed when we talked about, well, it is the Lord's house. Are we keeping Jesus out of the Lord's house? Well, think about what happens when Jesus comes into the Lord's house and he sees that things have gone awry.
Right. Right.
He gets very upset.
He
And
does.
the analogy that I would make is if the church and those who are the body of Christ who are within the church are not living into the kingdom, are not doing what they have been called to do, then we're squatters.
Hmm. Right. Trespassers.
We are trespassers.
Right.
We are people who are supposed to um, be guarding it and being stewards of it, but instead we're squatters because we're not taking care of it.
Hmm. Right. Um, the I read Jesus saying to him, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" And I say that with a smile because that's how see
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. He wasn't angry. He didn't do this with an angry voice.
No.
When he addressed the money changers inside the temple, that
Mm-hmm.
was not a friendly voice. I don't think. I don't hear
No, I think
Jesus
that was
say,
anger. Yeah.
why have you turned my father's house into a marketplace, you den of robbers, right? No, this was, yeah, he was mad. And so, so this is different. The other thing I should point out about one reason why gaining permission to enter a boat is that on a sailboat, when you step on it, you make the boat move. And
Mm-hmm.
anytime somebody came on the boat and asked permission, it's that everybody else grabs onto something, so that the boat is stable, so that we know that somebody else is coming on. And we love to use the phrase, well, don't rock the boat. It literally rocks the boat when somebody gets
Mm-hmm.
on. And so a part of that is permission and awareness of everybody that someone is joining the boat. Um, Peter is sopping wet. He's much heavier than he was when he got out of the boat. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you imagine the boat, tilts when they get him and Jesus onto the boat, that anyway, they needed permission to do it. Most likely at a high side to it as well. So the last thing is I don't think we can continue with the conversation without me mentioning something about Star Trek.
Please,
Yes, right?
please
Why not? It's been a
go
while.
for it.
The way that Captains Pike and Picard and Kirk and whatever Janeway,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody beams aboard the ship without permission, they get
Ooh.
very angry, right?
Oh yeah.
You did not have permission to come aboard, right? That so even in Gene Roddenberry's universe, a long, long time from now, you still had to have permission to board, and so I think it's wonderful that they carry that tradition forward.
Well, and I think the what might be a little bit more difficult to get from this story, unless you have read some of the threads of the other stories associated with this of Jesus coming aboard,
Right.
is that there are implications when anybody gets on your boat, but also that there are serious implications when Jesus decides to get
Hmm.
on your boat.
Hmm.
Um, think about Simon Peter and the first time Jesus got in his boat.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. You
You
want to tell
know,
everyone about it?
well, that is the story of go out, push out. I know you've been fishing all night, but push out and go fish. And then they get a tremendous amount of fish, and what does Peter say? Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man.
Yes.
He demonstrates to Simon Peter who Jesus is,
Right.
but also he reminds Simon Peter who he is.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there are some serious implications whenever you let Jesus onto your boat.
Hmm. I would say good implications. I mean, I
Well,
would still,
but
right.
there are serious there. There's serious implications in the sense of it's not necessarily going to go the way that you plan it,
Right.
which can put you. It can disturb you, it can disrupt you, it can put you out.
It can. Right. So since I was able to mention Star Trek and you were happy with that, I
Hmm.
do need to at least mention one Greek word. And the word used, translated as ghost, because they saw Jesus walking and they were terrified and they said it's a ghost. The Greek word is phantasma.
Oh yeah.
Phantasma. Or phantasma, however you want to pronounce that A. I think it's a great word. It's where you get phantom, right? That's where that word comes from. But phantasma, like
Mhm.
plasma, but it's a ghost. Anyway, so I have fun with that stuff. It's just you and me, right? We can
Well, you
chat.
buttered me up with the Star Trek thing, so you can go ahead and do the Greek thing because yeah.
Well, right.
But I think the this comes back also to setting the precedent later on when Jesus appears to the disciples. I'm not a ghost.
Yeah.
After the resurrection,
Hmm.
he appears to the disciples and he demonstrates to them, I am still real.
And how did he
And
demonstrate that to them?
give me something to eat.
Give me something to eat.
Give me something to nosh on. You got a little something, little hors d'oeuvres?
The rabbi's hungry, right? I want something to eat. And they
Exactly.
also knew that that was him, that Jesus always seemed to be like a teenager that is constantly hungry. I hope he doesn't mind me using that. That he's fine with it.
I'll go even worse. I'll go even
Okay.
worse. I'll bail you out. He is like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. He's always eating, you know, in the
Okay.
scenes. Sorry, it's one of my favorite movies.
Good.
Um,
I have seen it once. I know at least,
oh,
but I will now watch it again. Didn't Elvis
yeah,
eat all the time? Anyway, but it's it's how they knew it was him.
yeah.
Your boys are eating all the time, right?
Oh gosh, it's easier for me to count when they're not eating
Right.
because, I just leave the fridge door open and hope that it stays cool because it's always open. Um,
To leave something for your parents, just something, a little
just a
morsel,
little something.
just a little something.
Uh, but kind of as we come to the latter part of our episode today, uh, I think that the church, I think that our ministries, to which we've been called both as clergy and just as groups of people, the things that we exercise,
Mhm.
and as individuals, we have to be aware that inviting Jesus in, like I said, it carries some serious implications. And then I don't want to say it carries dangers because that's not the word I'm going for,
Mhm.
but it causes change.
It does.
Whenever Jesus is invited into something or somewhere,
Right.
there's going to be a change.
Right.
And I think that we can be afraid. It's easy to be afraid
Hmm.
because, like, well, we don't know where this is going to lead. We don't know where this is going to go.
Hmm.
Is Jesus going to ask me to step out of the boat in some way that I'm not sure about? Which could,
Right.
take us back to that plain reading of the text.
Right. Right. Um, the all right. Do you want to do one more Greek thing, or do you want to hear about Captain Picard? We'll do Greek. All right. So, uh, I made my own decision. The tense in Greek about something that happened in the past is still happening today and will
Yeah,
happen
the
again.
aorist tense, right?
The aorist tense. Thank you. That the getting into the boat is an aorist tense. Jesus got in, is getting, will get into the boat,
Right.
and the connecting to that is the ceasing of the wind. That the verb of how things are ceasing, has ceased, is ceasing, and will cease. So it's the yin and the yang, if you will, that as Jesus gets in the boat, the wind is ceasing. The wind is ceasing because Jesus got in the boat. It has happened, it is happening, and it will happen. And so that no matter what is going on in your life, and how strong that wind is, inviting Jesus in is something you have done in the past. It is still happening today and will happen in the future. And that storm that is with you, Jesus will continue to cease it, to continue to stamp that wind down with the invitation in the boat. So, so keep doing it. And for those of you that have invited Jesus in and may have forgotten about it, you still can bring him into your boat.
And I think that's wonderful because many of us are facing a lot of storms in life.
Yeah,
And these are very internal storms
right.
that many people around us do not know is happening or are happening.
Right.
So perhaps one of the things that we can pray for as we pray for other people is praying that they will let Jesus in, that we pray we will let Jesus in, that we will let Jesus into our communities, into our souls, into our families, into our
Yep.
ministries, into our relationships,
Yep.
all of those things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing to invite is, if I can take it out of the metaphysical and put it into the physical world. The folks that do all the researching on hurricanes and forecasting. Now, Alex and I are in Florida. It is the
Hmm.
beginning of August, which is, to be honest, this is really when the hurricane season begins.
Yeah.
For us, it's certainly not for those in the Atlantic, but for us, now is when things get serious. And
Hmm.
really, in September, the deadly ones are
That's
September.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in October. Notwithstanding Andrew, I know, but outside of that one, um, so if you haven't made your preparations yet, do so now. Do so this week. Get your plan. Get ready. We have had a very quiet season, and
Yeah.
they're saying that because it has been quiet doesn't mean that it will be quiet. So remind ourselves, our churches and everything, to make a plan, to get ready. Don't freak out. Jesus is around. He'll be with you, but to be ready as well.
Yeah. Because this eventually a storm will come.
Yeah, it will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to thank you because this has really opened my eyes in several different ways about this text, and I'm going to preach it in a different way. I've got
Nice.
some ideas because of this conversation, and I look forward to sharing that with my congregation.
Excellent. And as always, I enjoy our time together. And off camera, we'll talk more about Star Trek and Picard's reaction. The consummate diplomat and all that. Somebody beams aboard his ship. He is not kind at all. And
Mhm.
so it's
You
anyway.
see the little vein. You see the
Oh,
little vein above the bald head right here. You know.
I don't know how Patrick Stewart did that, right? I don't know how, but he would just embody this very angry, yeah. And so, yeah, so don't anger Picard. I
No. So, but we'll
we
make the
shouldn't end with
last thing.
yeah.
We'll make the last thing about Jesus and say, don't forget to invite Jesus into your boat. There you
You
go.
got it. That's right. Very good. All right. God bless you, my friend.
All right, God bless you. God bless everyone. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And we'll catch you in the next one.
And send it to a friend.
Exactly. Bye bye.
Bye.